Okay, I'm doing this video on tactical intelligence or tactical planning versus Tacti-Cool. Well, bullshit. Fantasy. Here's the thing about it, alright? You can run around in BDUs with tactical gear and your battle rifle, your AK or your AR-15, and be like, yeah, I'm ready to survive because I look like G.I. friggin' Joe. And here's the problem. You're not tactical. You look like an idiot. I know I'm gonna piss some people off, but you heard me say it. You look like a frigging idiot. Look, alright. You want to see what tactical is? Here's tactical. My green shirt. This is tactical. My pants. They're tan, but they got kind of a olive tint to them. That's tactical. It's not because I got cargo pockets either. I know. But cargo pockets are tactical. No, they're not. They're convenient. Look, alright. Being tactical is based on weighing your odds and your options and developing a planned, intelligent response. Having all the SWAT gear, the LBVs and the rucksacks and the military stuff, that's nice. It's good equipment. You might need it if you're ever attacked by mutant biker zombies. Or more likely, a bunch of gang members, rolling up trying to storm your house or something if you live in a city. A bunch of crazy redneck country boys who think they're going to create their own little kingdom out in the rural area. It's all possible. Having the firepower to deal with a substantial threat is not a bad idea. It's actually a good tactical decision. But it becomes tactical crap when you don't use it intelligently. Let me explain. Let's say there's a Katrina-like event. I'm sitting here, no power, no water, except for what I have stored. If I go running around through town looking like G.I. Joe, looking like I'm ready to fight, I might deter a couple of fights, and I might inspire a couple of fights. There might be 3 or 4 guys who also have AK-47s who look at my setup and say, gee, I like the way his gear's set up, I want it. Well, there's 4 of us and there's only 1 of him. The tactical decision that they outnumber me and can therefore flank me and kill me applies to their decision-making process. The fact that if I go into town looking like this, I can blend into a crowd. I look like Joe Schmo. I'm in a t-shirt and khakis, right? Now, these same colors will allow me to kind of blend in a woodland environment. And I'm out in the country right now. You can hear the crickets and everything. So, my tactical decision-making is that I'm able to blend in both using earth tones that allow me to blend it in a woodland environment, at the same time wearing regular clothes in earth tones which allow me to blend in an urban environment. Town's about 12 miles away, so I have that option. If I go running around with a battle rifle and a shotgun or a deer rifle, it doesn't matter. I'm going to look like I'm ready to fight. If I have a handgun tucked under my shirt where no one can see it, no, I don't have a concealed carry permit, nor a handgun for that matter, I'm just using it as an example, I can blend in to my environment. I don't present the idea that I'm a threat. So I can go to the neighbor's house and be like, hey man, what's up? Because let's face it, if Bob down the street shows up at your house with his 2 nephews and his son, and they're all decked out like they're ready for war, it's going to put you on edge. When he starts talking about getting everybody organized and you need to set up perimeters and do this and do that, you're going to start worrying. So the idea of tactical decision making is based on evaluating factors in your area that pertain to events going on around you and developing a response to those factors. The Army uses the term METT-T. I'm actually going to describe this from the ArmyStudyGuides.com, actually their PDF. Now, first of all, your first factor in your METT, what the M stands for, and by the way, METT is described as METT-T. It's an acronym. Your the first letter of your acronym is mission. Okay, if your mission is to survive a catastrophe, a without rule of law event for an undetermined amount of time, uh, then you need to determine your mission, one or two levels up. So, in the military terminology, for an infantryman, he would be advised of the overall strategy that his squad leader and that his platoon sergeant is trying to implement. If you're doing this within a mag, everyone needs to know the plan. If you're doing this by yourself, your mission is simple. Exactly as stated. You need to look at specific tasks. So that would be having a generator set up, setting up solar panels, whatever you need to get the power coming to your house, set up a water purification system, rain collecting barrels, stuff like that. You have specific tasks, and you have implied tasks in that mission, which things that you're going to have to do to get other things done that's going to be of key importance to make sure you got everything written down, all the tasks that you need. Then you're going to have mission essential tasks. Now, in your mission essential tasks, one of the things you need to do is gather intelligence about the area around you, your environment. To do this, you need to talk to your neighbors. You can't go out and talk to your neighbors looking like G.I. Joe or G.I. Jane and trying to come off as some kind of commando man, because that's going to appear threatening to a lot of people. And when you appear threatening to a lot of people, they're going to react as if they have been threatened. Key thing to remember there. So one of your mission essential tasks is to gather intelligence, to communicate with your neighbors. Then you have to look at limitations and constraints. Let's say the power's out, so my limitations and constraints is that I don't have electricity. So having a ham radio or whatever might not work unless I have a battery bank power, set with solar panels to recharge it, or a generator I can start to run temporarily while the solar panels are charging the batteries, so I can get on the CB or the ham radio and talk to people around me, truckers or whatever, to find out if they have any information that I don't have. Then I need to go back and restate the mission overall. After laying all this out, I got to go back and restate that final mission, which is essentially what we're dealing with. Then now when we go into METT, E stands for enemy. Okay. Now in the concept of the military mind, you're going to be fighting an enemy. Okay. In a without rule of law situation or a shit hits the fan event, you may not have an enemy to fight. It might not be a gun battle. Your enemy might very well be nature herself, or time, or just the event itself. Either way, the factors you need to consider are the disposition and composition of your enemy, the strength of your enemy. Any recent activities. If you have gangs or anything like that in your area, you need to look at, consider them as an enemy. For any prepper out there who's looking at anything like this, you need to have a METT file put down. Go with news clippings and information like that of public access to tell you what gangs have been doing. You can get some of this information from your local sheriff's department. You can get into weaknesses in the gangs, possible activities, the most probable activities, and then you need to worry about that reinforcement ability. A lot of gangs get somewhat political to try and say that they're doing this for the people. They're the Robin Hood, stealing from the rich and giving to the poor, and really they're just stealing from the other guy and giving to themselves. Then you go into your first T in METT, which is key leaders, disposition, and composition. This goes back to your troops available. You need to see who your leadership is, who the most likely leaders in your community are going to be, their disposition, any groups, any families out there that have the potential to lead or take command of the situation. You want to look at their composition. You want to look at their strength, personal material assets, their activities, any sort of weaknesses, especially psychologically speaking. You don't want to have a guy out here trying to run the show who's an alcoholic or a drug addict because their main priority is going to be feeding their addiction. You don't want someone who's extremely volatile and not level-headed, who's going to be calling for violence off the top of their head. And these people who are in this position of leadership, even in your communities, these are going to be people who you're not necessarily going to allow to take over the community, but these are also going to be people that you're going to fall back on to work with to try to get the community moving in a direction so that people around you can deal with the event as it is. You need to look at people's morale. Then you got to look at the maintenance level of everything around you. Exactly how long it'll last, whether or not you can fabricate it or get spare parts for it after the shit hits the fan event. If you have any spare parts for your equipment or gear, stuff like that. Then you also need to look at the idea of terrain. Now, when you start talking about terrain, this is a security issue for any preppers out there. You're going to look at what they call a COCA. COCA stands for observation. This would be your fields of fire, observation, perimeters, places you can see. Cover and concealment. It's important to remember that the difference between cover and concealment is that cover will stop bullets. Concealment just hides you. Obstacles. This could be fences, ditches, creeks, rivers, stuff like that. Key terrain features, mountains, roads, bridges, stuff like that, whether or not any of them has been washed out. You want to look at things like that, avenues of approach, how somebody can get into your area, or in your case, getting out of your area in case of something doesn't come into play. The last thing we're going to worry about here for METT-T is going to be time. Now, you need to look at the time that comes into the planning and preparation of executing your plan, your planning and your preparation, the planning and preparation of others around you, especially after the shit hits the fan event has happened. If you're going to bug in, you're going to have people around you. If you're going to bug out, you're going to have to deal with people around you. Either way, you have to deal with people around you. This is one of the reasons why looking like G.I. Joe is not always a good idea, because you give out that idea of a threatening disposition. It's one thing to be able to go back and say, it's one thing to go back and say, I can defend myself, and to make the point that you can defend yourself if you need to. A good example of this would be, when someone comes over after the shit hits the fan event has happened, especially if it's one of these Tacti-Cool types, to let them come over and see you cleaning your battle rifle, with a loaded handgun sitting right there next to you, to let them know that if you're able to defend yourself, you have the weaponry and the equipment to do so. This will keep a lot of the gun preppers, the guys who think they're going to run around and have their own little personal wars, and they get to run around and play hero all the time in a combat zone, who spent way too much damn time playing video games and watching TV. To let them know that you're not defenseless, but at the same time you don't need to run around with all the tactical gear and stuff to give the impression that you're a threat. Then you also need to look at rehearsals for your drills, for your plans. If you're planning to bug out on foot, you're going to need to practice walking out, road marching, walking out with all your gear and stuff. movement, time till movement, the time it takes to move to a certain location, your fallback location, your BOL, whatever, that needs to be considered. You need to have a starting point, and you need to have points along the way that you can cache material or stop the rest and stuff until you get to your endpoint, and the time it's going to take to do so. Now, all this comes under the METT-T material. Like I said, I was reading it right off the Army's website, and I've kind of made some annotations to it to give the idea that of adapting that to the prepper thinking. Now, here's the thing about it: the guy who shot up the movie theater in Aurora, he was Tacti-Cool. He walked in with all this body armor, and he had a shotgun and a battle rifle, and he had a pistol. And in his situation, he went in armed to the teeth and attacked a soft target, a location where the owners of the movie theater didn't want weapons, so nobody was armed, and he came in armed to the teeth. And even just in case somebody disobeyed the rules, because just because someone doesn't want you to do something or the law says you can't do it doesn't mean you can't do it. I mean, hell, he killed people, and he's going to suffer the repercussions for it. I don't know if Colorado's got the death penalty, but gee, he deserves it. Anyway, he took that into effect. Just in case someone was armed, he came in with body armor and everything else. When he walked out and he seen the police and he realized the cops have far more numbers and far more firepower than him, he threw down his guns, took the body armor off, and said, "Hey, I'm done." He made a tactical decision based on his odds and his options. He didn't have very good odds having a shootout with the police and surviving. He didn't have an option of any other options but surrender or get blown away. So he chose to surrender. Now, the fact that what he did in the first place was just horrendous. But he applied tactical decision making. Now, let's face it, if he would come out dressed the way he was, because the power went out or the power's been out for 3 days and no one's had any communication, he's walking around decked out with all the weapons and a body armor and everything, a lot of people in their homes would have been running for guns. Just for the simple fact, and the people who didn't have guns would have been running out the back door as soon as they seen him coming. And that's where the Tacti-Cool look is going to be a problem, because how are you going to communicate with your neighbors? How are you going to deal with other people come a catastrophic breakdown in the social order around you? It's one thing to have that gear. I mean, if he was defending his home and he had that gear, he would probably scare the living shit out of whoever was trying to break in there. If there's a couple guys thinking they're just going to kick the door in and come in and storm the place, when they see him decked out with all that gear, popping a smoke grenade, and running and gunning at him with that gear, that would have been a massive deterrent. It would have scared the living, crap out of them, and it would have set a example to everyone else around him about his ability to defend himself with that gear. But being the aggressor, decked out in a similar manner as that he was, another prepper trying to communicate with the people around him is going to, not. You're going to stick out like a sore thumb, and you're going to present yourself as a threat. Here's the thing about it: you can have a $50 tactical folding knife. It doesn't matter. You can have your battle rifles and your tactical gear and everything else. Okay. Here's the problem. Superior tactics makes up for a lack of superior firepower. I can take a steak knife, a sharp stick, piece of glass, sneak up behind you, stick it right in behind the carotid artery, push straight across along the bone, and cut out, severing both carotid arteries and your trachea. Why? Because it would be a tactical decision using your blind spot from having all the body armor and your lack of mobility. kill you, dead or in hell, with a steak knife that I bought in a package for $1 from the Dollar General store. So just because you spend a lot of money on high-tech gear doesn't necessarily mean that it's an intelligent decision. I can take a sharp stick out of the woods I get for free and do the same thing. Now, for those of you who aren't aware, the whole little thing I mentioned about slitting the throat, there's a little key point to that I'm not going to mention on YouTube because I don't want people mimicking the same thing. But generally speaking, whenever someone tries to cut open another person's throat, usually they end up slicing their own hand because they have to clamp down on their mouth. And usually when you clamp down on somebody else's mouth and try to pull them, they start struggling. And a lot of times when people go to slice that throat open, they end up cutting themselves. And so there's a certain thing you have to do before you reach that point to debilitate your target or your victim, or however you want to think of it. And I'm not going to tell you, but I am going to tell you that doing it the way I described is flawed. So don't assume that just because I said I can do it, that how I said I can do it's the end-all decision of how it's done, which is basically my way of saying don't try it at home. But when you're determining your environment, your situation, you're looking at tactics, the odds and options of success, the options available to you, and the odds of them allowing you to succeed. There's factors for each one of those. There's a lot of things to take into consideration. But in the end, ultimately, the tactical decision isn't based on what looks cool or what the military has or what the SWAT team has. The tactical decision is based on what is more appropriate to your environment. And I'm not just talking about your environment as terrain features. I'm talking about the socio-political environment. I'm talking about, and by socio-political environment, I'm talking about your social environment involving the politics. Because let's face it, if you live in a not so gun-friendly state, having a gun period is going to be seen as bad. You're the bad guy, and also, if your political environment is rife with a lot of the tensions of, evil white people suppressing the noble black man, or the evil black man trying to whatever, or the evil Asian, or the evil Hispanic, or whatever you're worried about, if there's any type of racial tensions in your area, what you're going to deal with is you're going to deal with a lot of clannishness and a lot of fighting and a lot of aggression. So you don't want to walk into a neighborhood where whites aren't welcomed in a shit hits the fan event and be the only white guy there. You don't want to be the black guy who makes the mistake and shows up at a Klan meeting, or the Asian guy who happens to knock on the wrong door and get blown away by a bunch of Latino gang members, or a bunch of Latino guys who are going to be, attacked because they're taking jobs away from Americans, even though they were born here in the U.S. and they're American citizens. They're going to be, seen as a threat. You got to worry about those factors in your environment, not just, what it takes to blend in the woods or the town or whatever. So your decision-making process is going to have to key into a lot of factors. And sometimes you're not going to get to play with the cool tactical gear. Sometimes it's just going to be you're better off walking around town with a wife beater and board shorts and flip-flops looking like a hippie. So you don't stand out as being aggressive or a threat. That's the idea of tactical decision-making, deciding what is most appropriate to avoid trouble, to make your life easier, to survive without having to confront things which cause you problems, including confrontations with other people who might see you as a threat for looking all tactical and, armchair commando.